today's episode of the Be Better podcast, I'm joined by an incredible mentor, personal trainer, and one of my closest friends, Jerry Maggio. Jerry also happens to be my godfather. He's known me since the day I was born, and I was the ring bearer at his wedding. And somehow in this life, he's got lucky, or maybe cursed, by being not just my dad's best friend, but one of mine too. Jerry and I have gotten super close over the years, especially through fitness. He's one of the voices in my life that keeps me grounded, motivated, and pushing when things get tough. So it's a no-brainer that he'd be the very first guest on this podcast. In this episode, we talk about the catalysts that pushed us to take control of our health, the struggles we've seen and lived through in the fitness space, some of our favorite training stories, and most importantly, what we've gained from putting fitness first. My hope is that this episode helps you dig a little deeper into your why and realize that becoming a fitter version of yourself has way more to do with how you feel than how you look. Let's get into it.
Live, like the ones that I've seen.
Yeah.
But it looks like you don't, do you do like several takes? Because I feel like it's so organic because you're just like, which is, I have to tell you, like, it is awesome because it's so real. Like, it's not perfect and it shouldn't be. Like, It's great. Like, you talked about the ant that was going on the wall.
Yeah.
What did you say? He was
a paid actor.
He was a paid actor. That's
actor.
So great.
Well, because I'm watching back the video because I watched them all once. Because when I get finished with recording a video, my first thing that I tell myself is, oh, this wasn't good. Or it wasn't structured enough. And to be fair, they could always be structured better. There could be better cuts. So you could be a different style of video, but it's more of a lecture. So that's just the nature of what it is. But I always watch it back and I'm like, okay, it's pretty happy. But then I catch all the small stuff. And so the ant was actually in the first version, maybe before I added the extra lighting that I had. And so, because I had put more lights in the garage to have a better kind of quality setup. But I'm just watching it and I'm like, are you kidding me? Because my garage doesn't have the best seals in different areas.
It's a garage. It's
but
going to get bugged.
It was hilarious because I'm like, what the heck? And then you see him come down and then he disappears. He just makes an appearance.
He like did a little zigzag. That was so funny. It was great.
Yeah, it was a good time. Happy guy. But yeah, the videos are not meant to be, it's hard because in terms of time restraint, I also still have the 40-hour a week job.
Sure.
And I do a lot of editing or videos for them, but the style's a little bit different. And especially if I'm not the one in the video, I usually feel like there's way more editing involved to get the message across for some things regarding that. And so when I do mine, or at least these style videos that I'm currently doing, I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to have to do a bunch of different takes. I wanted to feel more organic, which it might not get as many clicks of people that have a shorter attention span. But if somebody's actually looking for the information and then they see one piece of content of mine that resonates with them or has a lot of good information, then they know, okay, look, if I watch this whole lecture, there are tons of good little tidbits in it. And it's more of, you have to want the investment to make the change. Meaning, if you're looking for the answers genuinely and you do want to make the change, then that video will resonate and you'll continue to watch it instead of just watching it for entertainment purposes.
Right.
Because it's not an entertaining video. It's an instructional or educational video.
Sure.
So you have to want to be in that mood to watch it in the first place.
I'm wondering if you... and maybe you've thought of this already, but so you have your full video, and then with video people, like when I used to place people like that in jobs, it was like you're kind of creating like a sizzle reel. I don't know if that's even a term that's used anymore, but that's more like showing a portfolio. But to say for one specific video, and you'll say like one of your videos is 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, attention span, but maybe to attract people, you take 30 to 45 seconds of something from that video, even if it's fast, you know what I mean? If it's like all the highlights, it's like, do this, do that. And then so if you want to learn more about doing those things, then watch the full video, but then you have the little teaser basically.
Gotcha.
Again, not all that's like, anything dramatically.
No, I agree with you.
Mind blowing.
There's a lot of, the initial day job is marketing. And so when it comes to the video, the hook or the thing to make sure that they get grabbed is important. And it gradually gets better over time. The industries are so different from what I'm used to shooting compared to this now.
Yeah.
And even then, just from having the marketing experience background, sometimes I feel like there's almost not negatively or deceitful, but sometimes the hook, I almost feel like, I'm like, I want to grab their attention, but, and I understand the purpose of the hook, but sometimes I just feel almost gross kind of doing one where I feel like
Okay.
if I just naturally start talking, that would be how I want to enter a conversation. But what I will say is I have been more focused on it recently, as every video that I post, I try to improve it in some way or the other. And so anything that performs better than the previous, I'll look at, okay, how did I do the hook in this one? How did I structure the intro? How long did the intro take? And then I'll look at the analytics of when did it fall off of people stop watching, meaning how long did it take them to not get interested?
Yeah.
And then from there, just always improve it.
Yeah.
And my whole concept is the same philosophy that I go into with fitness of it's not going to be completely perfect at the start. You just have to start and learn it along the way.
Absolutely.
So where even if you mess up on day one, even if you improve that by 1% tomorrow, well, now you're at 2%. And then 100 days from now, you'll be at 100%. And then you just can keep going further from there.
Yeah.
So, but you're not going to get to 100% unless you start %1. So
Absolutely.
I figured I'm like, I'd rather put out 100 crappy videos and get all the experience from it. And then my 101 have a lot of impact. And then from there, that's where the traction goes.
Yeah.
But no matter what, if it's still going to take 100, I'm now 100 further or 100 closer to the actual impact that I want to have.
Right, because if you think about anybody who's like famous in one way, shape, or form, and tell me like when we need to like just like, hey Jared, shut up, we need to start. But like, you know, if you looked back, it's like, you know, if it's a musician, they played at dive bars first. They like were on the street. And like you start somewhere, and then you build from there. You see how people react to certain things, and you're like, oh, people like this music. I guess I'll write more shit like this, you know, or whatever. It works the same way. Like even the same thing, like the analytics side, like we do the same thing for Weber size for the company. So it's like we look, where does, you know, so somebody obviously arrives generally at the home page, like where do they click on first? You know, how long do they stay on the page? When do they leave the site? How long is anybody on the site for any given time? So it's all the same, you know, information. But that's the thing that you need to understand that. And but like I said, you need to start somewhere. Like, because we were also like, analysis paralysis, which is like, we have to put up a website, but like, what do we do? Just like fucking put something up. Just put something up. Even if it's one scrolling page, just put something up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but I think that's anything. And, you know, I could probably preach that to myself about certain things that like I'm taking too long to like make a decision on. I was like, but, you know, anyway, it's a whole other topic.
Speaking of, I want to go into speaking on Weber size because I know you're a part of them. And then there's also the fact that you do personal training on the side, or you've gone back into it now because of the current situation with work.
I mean, I probably wouldn't define it as that, because I don't honestly like work. It's like it seemed like it was a bit of a blip. I know that we had that conversation, like literally when that was happening, like I was like, I don't know what the hell is happening with work, but I think it's fine now. Okay. So, I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I guess I've, you know, even when I stopped working full time, I mean, you know, on site, like at the gym in AZ, I've always been doing the virtual training. So there really hasn't been a moment where I've stopped training since I started training.
Gotcha. So, when did you start training? Because I know, at least from where our relationship is now, I just feel like it's always been like this. Like, I don't recall a time when I wasn't like this and you weren't like this. And so when I think of how I get started, I remember that. I remember, you know, the steps that I took to get into a healthier body and a lifestyle, and then eventually go and transition into, hey, I'm going to be a personal trainer because I want to help people also feel like this. But I don't know when you made the switch exactly or why.
So I was about to turn, I shouldn't say I was about to turn 30, but there was, no, it was actually even a little bit before that. So it was probably 2000-ish. So yes, you were only 3 years old, basically. I was always a skinny kid growing up. And then my metabolism, like probably like in college, started to slow down a little bit. So I started to get a little thicker. And then, you know, people say like, you know, when you're in a relationship and you get comfortable, that's when all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't need to be like at my best anymore. I'm just going to, you know, whatever, and be totally relaxed. But like leading up to, God, it was 2000, right? No, it was after. So I got married in 2000, and I was probably...
Because I was there.
Yes, I know you were. Your dad actually just pulled up some pictures too. We were looking at that last night. But later that year, I had realized like I had gotten to like 195 pounds. So like my norm is probably 160. I'm a little bit above that at the moment. Probably a little closer to 170, but anywhere like in that 160 to 170 range is probably like where I need to sit. Is that Miss Boots?
That is Miss Boots.
It's very cute, yeah. And oh God, she's a talker.
She is.
And so I think it was like, I don't even know, it was like October of that year. And I just got on the scale. I was like, I'm 195. I'm 195 from like 160 is a decent chunk of change. And I was like, well, fuck that. I was like, I mean, I don't know if you want me to curse or not curse. Okay.
No, please.
And I was like, I'm going to fucking eat my way to 200. I'm like, why am I? I was like, I'm heading into the holidays. I'm like, I'm not going on a diet now. Like, that's dumb. And so I literally, like, we would go out to eat. And I'm like, are you finished with that? I was like, and I finished my meal. I'm not even joking, dude.
You made it a goal to get to 200?
100%. Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I made it there. I was highly successful at that
Jeez.
very easily without even thinking about it. And then I was like, okay, I probably should stop doing this now. And then, like, just kind of organically, I started to go back a little bit, you know, just because I wasn't eating everybody else's meal in addition to mine. And so I probably like knocked it back down to like, I don't know, like maybe 190 or something like that, just without really even trying all that much. I was also in my 20s at the time.
Yeah.
And then, so that was now 2001. So now heading into 2002, I was about to turn 30 that year. And I felt like I was turning 60. Like I felt awful in just every way. Like I remember things that are like, that I'd never felt before, walking down the street and I could feel my belly going up and down. I'd never felt that before. I'm like, this is bad. And then I also remember another friend of ours who always had kind of like the beer belly gut. Like this is somebody from theater. But this friend came up to me and he was like, patted me on the belly. He was like, hey buddy, you're starting to look like me. And I literally, utter panic set in, which I didn't say to him. But I mean, this was, if you think about it, that was, I think it was 2000, I don't know, I guess maybe it was that was 2002. So that's 23 years ago at this point, right? And I remember that moment so vividly, and it put me in a place I'm like, I look like that? I'm like, and because you just, sometimes you don't realize it. And I was like, fuck. I'm like, no. And it just like, and I just went into a whole thing where I started doing Taibo, if you know, you probably don't know what Taibo. Do you do? Okay.
I know what Taibo is.
Billy Blanks, you know, if you know Billy Blanks. So literally was doing that at night for 15, 20 minutes. I just would, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was doing that and I was just limiting what I was eating. I was like, and you know, carbs are bad. And so I was not eating bread, you know, or whatever. Made up my own, you know, diet, but I lost weight. I mean, like, you know, hey, if you reduce your calorie intake and you move, guess what happens?
You lose weight.
Right. So even though I didn't know what I was doing, I was successful, you know, to a certain degree. But then, and I ended up losing like very, very quickly at that point, like within months, I probably dropped like 15 pounds, you know, which again, for not knowing what you're doing, I thought that was pretty good. And I even had, you know, somebody, another friend of ours was like, dude, did you just drop a shit ton of weight like really fast? I was like, as a matter of fact, I did, you know, whatever. Just really like proud of myself. And all of a sudden, like, this is cool. I kind of like this. I mean, sure, the compliments are great, you know, but I felt good. Like I had more energy, you know, all the things. And so I started to like just get more information. And I always tell people this too. It's just like, I do not like to read. I am not a person who likes to sit and read. I'll read something and then all of a sudden I'm like
squirrel.
Totally squirrel. And I'm like, I don't remember what I read. So then I had to go back to the beginning. I'm like, I'm never going to get through this book. I'm like, this is bullshit. But when it came to fitness or nutrition, usually it comes in the form of articles and shorter, you know, content. And I would be glued to it. And I was like, there's something about this. I was like, I think I want to like learn more about this. And then like little by little, like, you know, again, I started to work with a trainer for a little bit, got to learn a little bit more from them, picked up a few things. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then when I started going to a gym, I was focusing on upper body and I was like, oh, and I'll just do the treadmill for my legs. Like, that's good. And then learned your biggest muscles are in your legs. I was like, and doing the treadmill is probably not developing them. Like, if you want to burn fat, you need to develop your muscles. And I was like, duh, you know, those. So then I started to train my legs. So little by little learning bits and pieces. And then I got so into it and people were asking me, you know, and so I was organically like helping them. And it's like, I like doing this. I was like, this is great. You know, like I feel good myself. I want to teach people these things. And my career at that point had been focused on recruiting. So I was always in a type of career where I was helping people, but in that case, I was helping people career-wise and find jobs and whatever, and help them in their career path. And now I kind of wanted to transition and help people this way. And so I looked into getting certified and became a personal trainer.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think, at least for me, to an extent, the majority of people, the reason why I think people should take care of their health and get healthy is because how they'll feel and for their health overall. But I think it usually stems from an appearance aspect, like where your buddy tapped you on the stomach and said, you're going to look like me. And part of me likes that because that was the catalyst that got you to start. But I also hate it because I don't think there's anything inherently wrong if that gentleman was happy in his condition. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I always think that's, but that's 90% of the time when somebody makes the change or usually starts the change. Because I remember when I was super overweight, I basically gave up. I was like, I'm never going to be in that position. Like obviously, I became a firefighter for a period of time. That was something I wanted to do, but I never thought possible. So it was like a dream that I just shoved down. I'm like, you're not ever going to be able to do that. And once I kind of got a little bit of momentum, which I always talk about stacking your wins and making sure that you can keep the momentum and track your progress, you can see that you're capable of doing it. That's when I got really serious about it and I started to feel better. I felt like I could do a lot more. Being in a fitter body allows me to remove some of these restrictions that I thought I once had, meaning you are able to do X, Y, Z. You are able to go on that hike. You are able to have this specific job because you're capable. It opens up new opportunities. But I always think it always does kind of stem from an appearance standpoint. And then once you start feeling how much better you feel and the confidence, and then I feel like there's this wave of, oh, I can do everything. I can do anything because you yourself intrinsically turned your life around. That's when it gets really, really started and you gain the momentum, and then you just go down the rabbit hole and then everything's up and up from there.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Like there is obviously the physical appearance part, there's nothing bad about that. Like it's nice to get compliments and all those things too. But, even when I talk to training clients, I say to them, I was like, that stuff is great, but that's really the byproduct. Like that's really the byproduct. Like it's all about, like to me, then when you go to your doctor and you get your blood work done, it's those numbers. And then it's also just how you feel and what you can do. Like the things that I remember when I first lost the weight and I was like, I did some volunteer work, whatever. We went to this like weekend thing with like teens and stuff like, and there was a rock climbing wall. I'd never done a rock climbing wall. And I was watching kids struggle. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, let me do this. And I just listened to how the instructor said, like, stay close to the wall, use your legs to push up, and your arms are just, what. And I was like, I'm doing this. I was like, I'm like killing this wall, and because I felt good because I had the strength, and that just, again, all those little bits and pieces give you that encouragement that you can do it. So, and I think, I don't know if I'm going on a tangent or not, but I think then surrounding yourself by, with people who have that similar philosophy as well, and they can provide that encouragement. So, when I first became a trainer, then I started working at a gym, and there were trainers who had been trainers for years, and I became really close buddies with this guy, Billy, and he literally, like, he is no fear. Like, what's the big deal? Just do it. Like everything, there's no hesitation, there's no fear, there's no nothing. So he got me into running. He got me into doing the mud runs and obstacle courses. And I'm like, I can't do this. I was like, and I did it. I literally did it. And I remember when I did it. And again, at that point, I'm in my mid 30s, you know what I mean? And so it's like sometimes even at that point in somebody's life, they're already feeling like it's too late. And it's not, And I remember doing my first mud run, and let's say it was like on a Sunday. The next day I was working in Manhattan, and I was standing so tall and walking through the streets of Manhattan like, I did that yesterday. Like that was so great, And it's just like all those little things just give you that encouragement to do anything. Like it doesn't even have to be something physical, It just gives you that confidence to do anything.
And I also love the fact that, speaking on like the opportunity of being able to do more stuff, and I use an example of something that actually you and I did of the last time that I was in AZ visiting you guys. And I don't remember the name of the exact... Camelback.
Yes.
And I remember walking up and you're like, yeah, we're going to do this hike and it's pretty hard. And it shows like a double diamond black or whatever. And it said like an extreme difficult hike. And I'm like, oh man, like, cause I've done hiking before, but it's just simple trails in Pennsylvania, like nothing crazy. And I remember physically climbing with my hands and my legs up this mountain, this plateau, whatever you want to call it in AZ, because it's rocks.
Yes, basically, yes.
And I remember getting to the top, and it was a fantastic hike. I loved it. You were there, obviously.
Yes.
But it was strenuous, and and it was work to get up there. But I remember the view from up top.
Amazing.
And the thing that I was able to visualize, or the thing that I really felt gratitude in that moment, was the fact that I was capable enough to get myself to this place. Like, there are many people that aren't going to be able to have the same view as me, simply because I have a different state of body than them. Yeah. And that goes to say a lot for, there are some individuals, like we saw that guy with a one leg coming back down, which was insane.
Yeah.
And it goes to this thing where there are some people that don't have the opportunity, regardless if they take care of their health or not, to be able to hike that mountain.
It's just the cards they were dealt.
That's the cards that they were dealt.
Yep.
They stay positive in their life. They do whatever they can. They make the impact that they can, and they live a fulfilled life. But you're an able body that has the opportunity to do that.
Yep.
And there was a point in my life where that changed, and I said, I'm going to make sure that every opportunity that I was given to be able to experience that, I can.
Yep.
And I'm just so grateful for that. And so I just think of all the people that might be missing out on experiences like that physically because their body won't let them.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's not their thing. Like, so fine if like you're not excited about hiking,
100%.
But whatever the thing is, it's just like, and that's one of my motivators, even as I continue to get older. I don't want to want to do something and then say I can't because I'm not able.
Yes.
Because of choices
Exactly.
I've made. So I want to be able to say, because of the positive choices that I've made, I can say I want to do that, and I can do that.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be hiking like you just said.
Whatever.
It could
Exactly.
be
Whatever
regardless,
the thing is.
whatever.
Exactly.
But I'm removing the barriers that would prevent me from having a very specific and uninterrupted experience in the thing that I want to do.
Yep.
Because I no longer have to worry about either my body failing me
limitation,
or a limitation.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing that I preach to people, where if they feel like they can't, even just making the investment initially leads to dividends and payoffs in aspects that you don't realize until you get there.
Yep.
But those are the things that I cherish the most in my life. It's not the body that I've built. It's the experiences that I can now have because of the body that I've provided myself to have, which I think is really important.
And sometimes like, what we start with like isn't where we're at now. And sometimes, it's not even just physical, but even mental. I will tell you, like, I grew up with fear of many things. Like, that's just how I was raised. I'm not going to point blame in any one particular direction, but it might have come from one of my parents.
Yeah.
But anyway, but again, like this, for example, this friend Billy, like, really helped me to like rewire myself. He's like, what's the big deal? Just do it. And I was like, and I'm sitting there obsessing over it. It's like, just stop thinking about it, just do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then finally just did. I was like, oh, you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, so even like hiking was probably something I never would have even done, even when I was like a teenager, because of fear. And then one of the things now, so here's, I guess, confession time here, never learned how to swim. So I can like barely doggy paddle. And so water is, I mean, I'll go into the ocean, like, up to whatever, chest level possibly, but as long as I can stand and my head can be above water, I'll be in a pool or in the ocean, but that's it. And one of my latest goals is like, I want to overcome that fear and I want to embrace water. I want to not be afraid of it. But I was raised to be afraid of it, And so, and that goes with anything. It's just like even lifting weights, like, or even running. I remember the first time I started to run, I was on a treadmill in the gym and I was like, I feel good. I was like, I'm going to just keep running. And then I was like, how far can I go? And I started, and you're watching obviously the numbers tick up on the treadmill, and I was like, I probably can't, I can't go more than 2 miles. That's probably not going to be good for me. I'll probably die, or something. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll just try a little bit. Maybe I'll just go one little notch faster. But then literally at one point I was like, okay, that's good. I was like, I should probably stop now. I did more than I ever. And then, but the little by little, it's like, if I did that, like, why can't I keep going?
Yeah.
So then I've done 5Ks. I even did one 10K.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, I can do this.
Yeah. My favorite part about the new challenges is finding that you can do this, because it's always, you never feel like that until you get right up to the point where you are just after the point in which you wanted to quit, and where now your brain can convince you, oh yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Because usually there's discomfort there, whether it be, pain from running or lifting something heavy or trying a new skill. Your brain wants to almost protect you in a way from embarrassment, fear, danger.
Yep. But it's sabotaging you, actually.
Yes, in most cases. I'm not saying
Yes.
go do some heinous, crazy, risky shit.
Right.
But so like I use the running thing now because I've started running again. And I'm not running for weight loss. I'm not running for anything because I know that there would be better ways for me to do that in the gym. But I'm purely running out of the fact that I want to be able to run a 5K. I think that's just something that I want to be able to do.
Yep.
And it's just purely from that standpoint.
It's a checkbox. Yep.
And it's fucking hard for me because I don't run.
Yeah.
It's never been something that I've been good at.
Yep.
However, every time that I increase the distance that I'm running or in part of the little training program that I'm following, it's always the last 4 minutes or the last 3 minutes of that run, which is now further than what I did the last time.
Yep.
My brain's like, you're done. You're toast.
Yep.
You can't do this.
Yep. It's that last half mile.
Like, what are you doing? You're gonna pass out.
Yep.
And you always, if you just push yourself, I always just get to that end. And then immediately, as soon as I hit that new little milestone, even if it's 30 seconds, there's literally been an instance where it was a minute difference between my last run and this run. And in that last minute, my brain kept telling me, you hit 21 minutes last time. You're not going to be able to hit 22 minutes straight this time. And the second that 22 minute timer went off, my brain did a 180. And all it was telling me was, holy shit, you're so capable.
Yep.
And the endorphins, the dopamine, all the chemical releases in your brain, I was on cloud nine. You couldn't tell me otherwise.
Yep.
I had to catch my breath, of course, but I was on cloud nine.
That's the thing, but if that's us, like, so we, go through that same psychological game, right? We're clearly not the only ones, but it's like when you get to that cusp, what do you do? Like, do you give into it?
Yes.
Or do you push through it? And bottom line is you can push through it. Like, I really believe anyone can push through that.
Yeah.
You just have to believe it. And like you said, it doesn't have to be where it's like, I did 20, the next level is 25 minutes or something, whatever, whatever the case is. And it's like,
1%.
No, just 1%, just one little notch. And that's how, and to me, that's even how I learned to run a distance, was I kept adding a quarter mile. Like every 2 times that I ran, like that was just my own, recipe. That was like every 2 times I will add a quarter mile. Like that's doable. It's just a quarter mile. And especially if you're running on a track, it's just one more lap. Like you can literally see it. You can see the beginning, you can see the end when you're on a track.
Yeah.
It's like, so if that's easier, then just do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just different ways, to overcome that stuff.
And I definitely think from a perspective of somebody who may be listening or watching that isn't in our position, because I definitely know that it's much harder in the beginning. That's the hardest part about fitness is in the beginning, it's so difficult. And once you get to a point where it's manageable or it's kind of like your life, then it just becomes still hard when in those experiences that we just described, but it's easier.
Yes.
Because we've been through that hardship. You can prove to yourself that you can do the hard things. But the main thing that I need, or that I like to tell people, especially when they're getting started, is a huge component of mine is to define your why. And it means why you are starting. And the why can always change. Hell, sometimes I change mine like week on week just because that's the difference.
It can be multiple whys.
It can be multiple whys too. But it's usually until you have the stacked proof or confidence of in that period of time where you're really doubting yourself, I might rely on confidence now of I can do this because I've done other hard things, and that pushes me through that last little minute of the run. Some people might have to rely on your why. Yeah. And so, like, I remember when I was training to be a firefighter, my why at that time was you're about to go into a job where people's lives depend on your fitness level.
Yep.
So how dare you quit? And that pushed me through those extra minutes until I got to a point where now I could just rely on confidence.
Yep.
And so what I want to ask you is if you have one right now, if you remember maybe one of the first whys that you had, just kind of the why behind why you continue day in and day out to show up for yourself.
I think it does. I'll say maybe it's changed a little bit.
It does. It always does.
I'll say generally I think the overriding theme is what we talked about before is I don't want to look at something that I want to do and say, I wish I could do that, but I can't because I'm not physically able to do that. So I think that's always been my like overriding why.
Yeah.
I think for myself, like, as I continue to get older, I also, well, I was like, there's a few things. So I also joke that, we're not wealthy people, myself and my wife. And so so like, I'm probably going to need to work till I'm 80. I'm thinking maybe even more than that. So if I need to do that, I probably need to be physically fit enough to do whatever I need to do. So I should stay healthy and stay in shape. So that's a why it's like a funny why. It's like
Yeah.
I'm joking, but I'm not joking.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I really do think that it's being just really being able to do things, just being able to do, like, I don't want to be limited and have it be my fault. Like, when, like you said, when I'm somebody who has been given the opportunity, and until it's taken away from me,
Yeah.
I'll do the best that I can with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. The why that I always go back to is it always stems from when I was younger. Because obviously I had the transition or the change from a healthy lifestyle at a younger age than you did, or perhaps maybe the same age, really, if we think about it, but just different timelines.
Yeah.
But mine came from a confidence aspect of me never ever being in shape. I was never the skinny kid. I was always the overweight kid, and it came a point where once I started seeing that traction, that's when I decided, okay, I don't want to be this person anymore. And my weight and my health was a direct correlation to my confidence level. And so my why is I don't want to be the biggest guy in the room. I don't want to be the best guy at everything in the room. I don't need to be the best dude at this. I don't need to be better than anyone else. But what I do need to be is unwaveringly proud of myself. And so my why always stems from a proof to myself that I'm capable of change and of confidence. And so that way, no matter what anybody in that room says to me, all right, well, I know what I'm about.
Yep.
And so that's kind of my why that I always push towards, is it stems more towards me. And so I just always think that, especially when starting out, to come back to that main point, is when you were first starting out, if it seems really hard to find that why. Like, I use the example sometimes in my videos of, if you have kids that are relying on you,
Yep.
your why may not necessarily be for you. It could be for them. I mean, there is some responsibility there. I'm not saying that every parent needs to go be able to run a 5K. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. But be there in a capacity, because, like you said, if you're able, you never want to be limited on what you're able to do. What if you're limiting some instances or some opportunities where you can go do things with your kids because of that?
Yep.
Like, I look at it and I look forward into the next, handful of years over the next decade, when, kids are something that I have in my life, and I want them to be able to look at me and go, oh, we're going to be able to do whatever we can do.
Even it's, Daddy, let's go for a walk. And you're like, I can only go like a block or two.
Yes.
It's like that to me, it's like you're taking away time, from yourself and your child, having quality time together.
Yeah.
Just even doing that. I mean, and I think, like you said too, like, not to be, you don't have to be the biggest guy in the room. You don't have to be like, the fittest person in the room. And I even tell people, like, most of my clients, I train for average life. I was like, there was one point if I were to open a gym, I would call it Average Jerry's Gym. Because it's like, I'm not turning you into an athlete.
Yeah.
It's not about that, not for competitions or whatever. It's so you can just lead your best, healthiest life as an average person. So maybe somebody's not going to look at you as you walk down and be like, wow, that person is like the fittest person I've ever seen.
Yeah. But
it doesn't matter, like, 'cause it's really not about that.
Yeah.
Like, I had a client that I used to train back in New York who, when she, said she went to the doctor and came back, like, after been training for a long time, and of course her doing her own homework as well too.
Yes.
She's like, I came back and all my numbers were great. My cholesterol was down, this was down, and she like high-fived me. She was so excited. I was like, that's great. Like, that's like the best news that I'm sure all of this had something to do with. All of it. Like, it's never just that one little piece. It's the whole picture.
Yeah. How would you say that, coming from a training perspective, because I know you were talking about training her in New York, when you first started as a trainer, because how many years have you been training people now?
So it's been almost 20 years. I guess
20 years.
18 years, yeah.
How do you think you, as a trainer, either the concepts that you bring to the table or maybe even the perspective that you have when training clients, has changed from when you first started to now?
I think definitely just even having a confidence in myself that I can pivot as needed, that I can understand what a person needs and what they're looking for, understanding the things maybe that are going on in their world that affect their fitness and their health level. Even just,
Yeah.
we've probably talked about this before too, like simple example, if you're a person who has a desk job, and you're doing a lot of typing, you probably have rounded shoulders. You're probably not strong in your back, and you probably need to have much more effort put into better posture.
Yeah.
Versus if you're somebody who's outdoors and does construction, then you
Yeah.
have different, things that you might need. And some people say like, well, I work, I work out all day. I was like, no, you probably do the same repetitive motion, and you're probably, if you're right-handed, you're probably, really favoring or using that side more.
Yeah.
So guess what? Like, you need to balance everything out. So I think, from when I started, really, I'll say just knowing textbook, it's like you do a row, you do a push,
Yeah.
or a push up or a press or whatever, to understanding like really little nuances, that every little angle makes a difference, that you adjust to the person, and that I think I can really understand where the person is coming from and what they need
Yeah.
to achieve whatever fitness level they're looking
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest benefit is, especially when I started, I just felt like, oh, everybody's just going to be like me. You want to get bigger muscles and you want to be able to look a better way. Because my shift has definitely went from almost kind of like a vain perspective of I want to look a certain way to now I want to feel and be capable in a certain way. And not that it had ever changed, but I know the longer that I have been training people, like you said, more confidence comes with it, and the ability to really go, what does this person need right now? Because, and then to go off of that, sometimes people don't just need to be given certain advice, but they also need to be not told certain advice to a certain extent. I remember I had, I don't remember, I still actively think about them, but I had a client where we were really trying to lock down his nutrition, but he had a past drinking problem and he was sober, and full sugar sodas were a way for him to curb that craving of alcohol.
Yep.
Who am I as a trainer to tell him you got to cut out that 600, 700 calorie beverage block in your life now? And so that would be grossly inappropriate to tell him you can't drink this soda anymore. You have to drink Diet soda. You have to cut this out, because he's got a whole different problem that he is trying to be better about with regarding that. And so I use having to go through and navigate. There's not a one size fits all nutrition plan.
Nope.
He had to really focus, and it was hard, but we were able to have him lose. I mean, I only worked with him for a few months, but 15, 20 pounds in that time, simply by changing the other food or the other opportunities in life. Or I talk about and I'll say her first name, Anne, who's my best client at this point. I love Anne to death. Her progress now is she has the same mentality as me of having just a healthy, capable mindset. But she started out just wanting to look better for her daughter's wedding.
Okay, yeah.
And and in the beginning, it was difficult because I even told her, instead of me being more of like a traditional trainer you might see online where we're doing some crazy movements on the Bosu ball or this wacky shit that you've seen on the internet, I'm like, listen, it's going to be very boring in the beginning, because we're dealing with some ailments in your knees. We're dealing with a lot of arthritis. We're making sure that we're not going to do a workout during the week that's going to take you out from going to your work, or basically make you so sore you can't do anything. And so I had to completely change. Her workout structure was nothing like I'd done with anybody else.
Yep.
But we were able to see that progress, and then she was able to make more progress, and we were able to add on more difficult things. And now she's slamming 30-pound medicine balls up and down, squatting, goblet squatting, doing deadlifts, coming from a position where the only exercise we really did during a session was box squats, just sitting on a box and then standing up.
Yeah.
And so I think the training style for me has gone from and this is how it should all start in the beginning, but everybody starts somewhere, is truly looking at what does this person need right now?
Yep.
Taking out what they don't need and only giving them exactly what they do need.
I mean, it's called personal training. It really should almost be called personalized training.
Yes.
Because I mean, it literally is. And like you said, you start You maybe, early in a trainer's career, you start with a one size fits all sort of mentality, but then you realize like, well, every single person is unique and they come to the table. Like you said, you could have two people that are the same height, weight, age, and whatever. But then like I said, you have somebody who has another challenge in their lives, like possibly a drinking challenge or whatever their other challenges, and that adds another component, that you need to, and it's a good challenge, for the trainer to be able to work around that, be able to, do what you need to do and find another solution.
Yeah.
That was even when I started training. I would say, okay, it's like I have everything planned out for James, and it's like, here we go. We walk into the gym, like the first machine I wanted to use is occupied.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't understand. I was like, I have to, and it's just like, you just pivot. You figure out another way to either do that same exercise or you flip around, whatever your plan was, and you figure it out, and that just comes with time and confidence.
Absolutely. If you had to pivot more to advice for anybody that could be watching, where they may be considering taking control of their life, hiring a personal trainer, anything, or even just a generalized advice to somebody that wants to have these kind of feelings, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
I mean, I think really just to echo what you said, like really define your why and commit to it, really believe in it and embrace it, and then whatever hurdle or obstacle might be in the way of achieving that why, just get rid of it, overcome it, do whatever you need to do. And then whatever you need to do comes in different forms. It's like, okay, does that mean I change this aspect of my life? Or does this mean I hire a personal trainer? Does this mean I find a friend to go, to the gym with? Does it mean I do stuff at home first because that's where I feel more comfortable? Whatever you do, just start, just do something.
Yeah. I think just start is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give anybody, because I know for me, I didn't hire a personal trainer until years into my own personal journey. And I know that advice and guidance could definitely be helpful, but I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone that they definitely need one.
Right.
Because you can do a lot of research on your own. You can figure it out. It is something that you are capable of doing. But if it's something that you need to fix rapidly, or you don't know how to navigate through all the information, because there is so much shit on the internet that is conflicting or it's different. And it's also hard because you might be watching something that's not meant for you.
Right.
That could be advice for someone who is not in your current situation. And I think that's why that personalized approach works so well, is because now you have somebody who's in your corner. There's not another corner. It's your corner that they're trying to fix. But really my advice goes down to, similarly to yours, is you are capable of doing it. You have to just stack proof. You're not going to feel like you can do it until you try, and just start. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning. I've made a video on it before where you don't expect a kindergartner to do college grade algebra. They have to go through 12 years of school to get to that point where then they have the opportunity to then further increase their knowledge base to then do those high algebraic equations. Mm-hmm. But you can't beat yourself up for not knowing how to do algebra in kindergarten.
Right.
You're just starting.
Right.
But what you can say is, tomorrow I'm going to know how to do 2 plus 3.
Right.
Today I know how to do 2 plus 2.
Right.
And that's all you can ask of yourself.
Yeah.
So
100%.
But it's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
I want to hit chest and arms.
Excellent. Let's do it.
But thank you so much for
absolutely.
Officially being the first.
Should sit up taller for that.
I know,
there
right?
We go. Yes.
Stand up, puff your chest out. The first guest on the Be Better podcast.
Awesome.
So thanks so much, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Awesome.